What is this, episode 5, I think? You don't know. You're busy with other things. I'm the one who does,
you're making it happen.
The number
you're making
things.
It happen. Yeah. Yeah.
So no gigs this weekend, but I went to a show and I have been spending way too much time on my cover project. So I spent all day today. It's embarrassing to say because it's Monday. I should be doing something more productive than this, perhaps. But I spent all day today working on my 18th cover of 20. This is not No Roots. I did that last time.
River
by Bishop Briggs.
Yeah.
And because I was actually working on Deantown. I wanted to do one more bass cover in this series. And, it's a song I worked on quite a bit over a year ago, maybe even a year and a half ago. And I could do it fine up to about 85% speed. And then I eventually got it up to 90 or 95% speed at some point. And I thought, I'll just knock out that last 5% with a week of practice. It's just not, it's not coming together. I don't have the agility to get that last few percent of speed on that song. So this morning, after practicing that, I switched over and I was like, well, I better pick a different song for song number 18 because it ain't gonna happen. So I went through my list and I saw River, and I was like, oh, that's just stomps and claps and bass and vocals, right?
Easy.
And background vocals and mouth noises going and chains dropping and claps and tambourine, which I didn't do.
The recording sounds super cool.
It's because you're teaching me how to mix. Wow. And so I'm getting, that guitar case on the floor behind me, that brown one there, you suggested I just hit it with the palm of my hand or whatever to get the stomp sound. Because I was trying to drop a pile of books on something like a trunk or an amp. Right. And the sound, you would think it would be a big fat sound like boom, but it was a gat.
Yeah.
It was more like a snare sound than a kick sound.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you suggested something like that. And it still wasn't a super big sound. It was a little bit lower.
Right.
But then you showed me how to, what did we do? Distort it. And I EQ'd up the low range up by 20 dB.
It wasn't that much, but yeah. you did the EQ. Uh-huh. We talked about compression. Uh-huh. And how the slightly slower compression on it was just letting the front of it
come through,
pop out and knock. And then the tail of that compression, because that was pretty intense compression, was that was bringing up all the sustain of the sound. So it wasn't just like a but. It was blah. It had some length to it, which is what compression is great at doing. I learned so much today. Yeah. So much. I felt horrible because I was constantly hey, let me tell you one more thing. Hey, let me tell you one more thing.
I was like, yes. Don't apologize. I did not go into this project thinking about learning to mix at all. Right. But I've learned so much about mixing. Yeah. This song sounds really cool. And all it is, it's a lot of tracks. Yeah. But the source sounds are not what they ended up sounding like. I played bass direct in. And then I just, picked something kind of round and unobtrusive for the verse parts. But then in the chorus parts where it goes to that sawtooth synth, I just put a super fuzz on the bass. Mm-hmm. And I think I had 2 plugins. I can't remember what the other one was.
I didn't even look. I didn't even see it. Yeah.
It sounded like a synth.
Yeah, it sounded great.
So cool.
Yeah.
And then for the chain sound that's buried it's a stomp and a chain and then a clap. So boom, cha, boom. But the boom has a chain dropping, chain gang kind of feel.
Yeah.
And so you suggested that I fill a Ziploc bag full of change and keys.
And it sounded so cool.
But dropping it sort of at an angle, not just dropping the whole thing, but
you had to kind of
I had to get it
roll
angled.
It out. Yeah.
Yeah. I ended up just holding it not level and then dropping it, and then it would land with a little bit of the way a chain would not all hit the ground at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
And you had like, I was just looking over your shoulder, but there was no EQ or anything on that. That just sounded awesome.
I ended up doing I think I ended up throwing some EQ on that actually.
Yeah.
To make it a little brighter.
Roll out some, and make it a little brighter. Yeah.
Or overdrive. I can't remember which one I added, but something to make it just kind of go a little sparklier. Now I'm going to put overdrive on everything.
You got to put overdrive on everything. It's so funny. I distort so much stuff in mixes. It's not I always say like I do stuff, and what I mean by that is like I also do that because I'm picking it up from mixers and engineers and stuff that I really love. But you would listen to a lot of stuff I do and go, oh, it's a nice clean mix. And if you heard any of the individual elements, you'd be like, oh my God, that is just distorted, like, but like mixed all together, it just gives it presence and size. And
it's magic.
It's mad. And I would bet if you went back and listened to all those classic records, Beatles records, Zeppelin records, all that stuff that we just now look back on and go, oh my God, it sounds so amazing. Partially because of the quality of the gear they had, in a modern sense quality, meaning everything just kind of distorted. It was basically impossible to get a literally clean recording. Like they didn't have, none of the gear would do that. The mics would distort, the mic preamps would distort. They hit the tape hard, that would distort. The consoles would distort. So like everything was pretty darn distorted. Actually, on a lot of Beatles records, you can really hear, especially some of those vocals are like, they might as well be going through a guitar amp. Like they are really distorted. And you go like, oh man, he's just singing his heart out. And he is, but it's also pretty distorted because they've got like a Telefunken, and a V72 or something preamp. And, that's just, rock and roll is distorted.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. Yeah.
So two songs left in this series. I'm getting to the point where I'm glad it's almost over. Because my bar...
It's a huge project, though.
It is. It is. And I didn't set out for it to be...
It was a 3-month project, 100 days.
Yeah. But I mean, I was originally thinking, well, I want to just do covers to make myself sing, but I don't want to use any karaoke track because that's cheesy.
Yeah.
So I'll maybe play bass on one, I'll play piano on one, and then I was like, oh, I could play drums on that one, and that opened a whole can of worms. And now the bar is so high, that I just want to make everyone cool, but I need to move on to other things.
Yeah.
The next showcase is going to come up pretty soon. I'm playing bass for that, and I've got a Pamela Muckala gig and I review stuff for, and
the showcase is coming up fast. I saw it on the calendar today. I was like, what's it, 2 weeks? The first rehearsal is
2 weeks from now. Yeah, Ooh. So you better start practicing.
Yeah,
it's not a hard one.
I'll get to
fortunately. And gigs are starting to pick up, so it's going to be very busy summer.
Yeah, wow, the calendar is starting to get really full.
Yeah, in a good way. I mean, full for us. It's not like we're playing like 4 nights a week or anything like that.
No, but we couldn't do what we do 4 nights a week. Not locally.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I went to the Pace Center in Parker on Saturday night with Lori Clayton. Thank you so much, Lori, for getting a comp ticket for Fleetwood Mask from San Francisco. So they flew in. It was their first time playing at this venue. They had played in Colorado a couple times before.
It was the Parker, you just said it. What?
The Pace Center.
Pace.
So it's like Parker Arts and Cultural Events Center.
Oh, okay.
That's why it's all capitalized. Seats 600 or 800. It's a really nice place.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I lent their Stevie my moon necklace because she forgot hers. Sisters, And it was a great show, and it was really interesting too. To see like the differences.
It had to have been weird. It had to have been weird. They don't do exactly what.
Not at all. I mean, they do Fleetwood Mac. We do maybe 3 Fleetwood Mac songs, if that.
But
they have a Stevie Nicks, and we have a Stevie Nicks, so that's the overlap. And she is amazing, Claudia Rodriguez. I think I have her last name right. I might be wrong.
No, it is. I saw it on the flyer.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, she channels Stevie like nobody's business.
Yeah,
really inspiring.
That's what. Yeah, and you would know because you've picked it apart and studied it.
Yeah,
you know.
But it's really interesting to see, like, even with both of us being as faithful to the Stevie character as we can, the different ways that you can come at it. Because my approach is much more influenced by the original studio albums. Because, first of all, because those are the ones I know. Right. As opposed to the live versions. Right. And second, because the studio versions tend to have melodies that are more repeatable. Right. More repeating. Yeah. And just lyrics that are more repeating. So to me, they sound more catchy and musical. So, for example, Rhiannon. Right. Live, Stevie Nicks, at least sometimes, if not usually, sings 3 different choruses. Right. And on the album, it's the same chorus each time. And that's how I do it because, first of all, that's how I learned it when I was a kid, when I was 13. Yeah. And second, because I like the repetition of it. It feels catchier to me. But that's not. Well, it
would have to be. Well, yeah, right.
But when it comes to recreating the experience of the music, which and so as I finished my thought, so Claudia channels much more of the live Stevie as opposed to the record Stevie. She takes liberties with melodies and phrasing and timing, right, and side ad libs and all this stuff much more than I do. But that's what Stevie Nicks does live. Right. So. Right. They're just. I mean, I don't think you could argue that one's better than the other, necessarily.
No, and it's funny, too, how far down the rabbit hole you can go with that tribute thing. I had a conversation with somebody a couple years ago where they were talking about, they do Grateful Dead stuff, and they really focus on the 75 to 76 live shows. Wow. And, they try to stay really faithful. I don't know if I'm on the right details, but they, and of course the Dead have that whole tape trading thing of where, the live stuff's really documented. But for their tribute thing, they were really focusing on the live show from this one tour that went across. Uh-huh. And that's what they were really trying to recreate. So it's interesting that you can come at it so many different ways. Do you do the album versions? Do you do the more live versions? Do you do the recent live versions?
Right.
Do you do the classic 1977 live version? Yeah. There's just so many flavors of.
Well, I think my takeaway is I'm going to let myself be a little more flexible and a little more. Just a little more ad-libby. Because I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah. And they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, no, you said it was. Yeah. Well, they're doing great touring. Yeah. All that. What, other than the Stevie stuff, what lesson would you say you took away from... How long was their show?
It was about... I don't know what time it started, but they opened doors at 7. They probably started at 7:30 or 7:45, and it ended at 10:30. So it was over 2 hours, probably 2.5.
With an intermission.
Yeah. Yeah. So, lessons... I noted some things that we could do better, and I noted some things that I think we do better. I made this little list. Not to sit and be judgmental or anything. The bands are.
But you gotta be if you're trying to get better at what you're doing.
Yeah, I was there to do some research.
I say all the time, one of the things I learned. I feel like I go off on all these rants about. My old days or whatever. But, one of the things I learned the most about was, playing shows with other bands. And the thing that you would do is you would maybe you were, whatever, before your set and after your set, you'd stand at the back of the room with all the other musicians and...
Arms crossed.
Yeah. Not really. But you'd kind of rag on the other musicians. You were friends with them and stuff, but I learned so much from going oh, that sucks. I would never want to do that. Oh, blah, blah, blah. That didn't work at all. Or oh, fuck, that really worked. And it was, that's how you get good is being
you pick
critical.
Yeah.
of other people. If you're not being critical and getting it down into that granular stuff and like, I like that, I don't like that, the details that are like, that's a tiny detail, but I have an opinion about it. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't get good without taking things to that level.
That's a good point, and that's true in any art, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that's true in any job, even if it's not art. You have to, like, you know, I'm sure your dad, who's a lawyer, would, like, read somebody else's law documents and be like, what a piece of shit. you know what I mean? Like,
well, he wouldn't cuss. He would.
Well, he would, of course, yeah, but, you know, like, he would know what he would like to do better given, you know, writing up the whatever. Like, everybody, that's the only way you get good at things. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not the only way you get good at things, but it's an essential ingredient. You also have to do that.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I mean, I'm certainly not going to throw shade on a great band.
And I'm not saying you are. Yeah, that's not, you know.
I would say one of the things that I loved they did that I could do better is the introduction to Landslide was really touching and kind of really connected with the room, maybe even more than my introduction to Landslide does. And I feel like mine was pretty good. It just came around, it got a little more personal. And then superficial things like, I forgot Stevie plays with her little things on her mic, her scarves on her mic stand constantly, and I never do that.
Yeah.
So, that's a tiny thing I could add to the authenticity. But it's funny, you know, kind of stepping back big picture, it is a little weird to me to focus so hard on copying somebody. I mean, that is what my cover project sort of is, but I'm learning, and I'm trying to make my own voice out of all this stuff.
And you're doing, versions.
And this is all inspiring me to get back into writing. I mean, I woke up this morning, I could not wait to get back into our music. Like, now that I can produce, basically, and I know how to do this, I'm going to just dive in and redo the stuff we've been talking about redoing some of these songs forever. I'm just going to start.
And you've learned, maybe you don't feel like it, and maybe we should talk about it, but you've learned so much from doing these like taking 20 songs and recreating either every element of the song or figuring out, like, I'm only going to do 3 instruments, so what are the 3 important you know, kind of note groups, you know, that I got to get in there. I think it's going to be huge. I mean, that's how you know.
I'm getting so much more out of this than I planned for.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. So anyway, what I was saying is it's like a little strange to focus on copying somebody. It's,
well, though we talked about it, you know, it's like.
Right. We did talk about this last night.
We are doing what essentially is really a theater show. Mm-hmm. It's like going to the theater. It's like going to a movie. That's our goal, is we want you to feel like it's a night of, it's like you went and saw a movie or you went and saw a play or whatever, you know. It's just a rock and roll version of that, and it's loud and you dance and whatever. But, you know, actors don't choose the role that they get cast for. What was the example I was using? Oh, on The Office, Rainn Wilson, who was Dwight, originally was auditioning to be Jim. And they were like, you're not Jim, but we think you're this guy. And he wound up doing it for a decade, and that's his biggest role and the things he's the most famous for. And he used all of his skills that he'd built up as an actor to be able to be this guy, but it wasn't necessarily who he showed up to be, you know? And I think in a way there's a similar thing with doing tribute stuff where it's like, you're the only way you can do, maybe this is even different than other people who do tribute stuff. I have no idea. But like, you didn't spend all your time getting good at singing and performing on stage trying to emulate Stevie Nicks.
Right, that wasn't the end goal. That wasn't like the motivating factor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I wanted to be a singer, and then I got this job.
And then you got this job where your job is to be Stevie Nicks in this theatrical performance, and you're using all the skills you built up to be, you know, and I'm sure that happens to actors all the time. I would bet money there's famous actors, huge actors, who probably like look at their career and go like, I never got to play what I wanted to play.
Right.
You know, like I always wanted to do this, or I thought of myself this way. Or a guy I love beyond love, Will Arnett, voice of Bojack Horseman, he was on Arrested Development. He never intended to be a comedic actor. He always thought of himself as like a very serious, dramatic actor, and he's got the gravitas and the voice, and and he's like, and then people started being like, "You're hilarious, man." And he was like, "I don't think of myself as funny. I'm not." And I heard this podcast interview where he's like, "I'm not a comedian. Like, I don't think of myself as funny. Like, I don't know how to be funny." But it turns out that I am funny, and I figured out how this thing that I do, if I put a little spin on it, it's funny to people. Mm-hmm. And he's had this huge career being like a comedic actor, not at all what he trained for, not at all what he wanted to do.
Right.
But it was the jobs he was getting, and he did it really well.
I keep thinking I hear the cat scratching at something. I guess that's nothing.
I'm sure she's
No, but then I love that, because I guess the thing that I hadn't put together yet, or reconciled somehow, or dealt with, is I assume that people who see us perform as me playing Stevie Nicks,
right?
I assume that they think that I am so crazy about Stevie Nicks that I want to be her.
Well, that would be the assumption, and that's what I was saying. Maybe for a lot of tribute people, that is, maybe, I don't know. I haven't had the conversation with them.
Yeah.
And
it's not that I don't like Stevie Nicks. It's just like, I'm happy being me. I have no desire to be anybody else. And in fact, by diving into her voice and her material, I've gained a much greater respect and love for her and her music than I had before.
I would say a very similar thing with, not with Mike Campbell, because I could not respect another musician more than I do Mike Campbell. To the point that I went out of my way to never learn any Mike Campbell parts. Like, I would listen and I would study and like what's it doing in the song.
Right.
Like, how's it what's the job of his part? How's it moving the song forward? But I would never learn a note of it because I didn't want it to. I've talked about this before. Once you figure it all out, it loses a little bit of the magic. It's not the thing you have when you were 12.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know what any of that is. But
it makes me feel.
It's just kicking my ass. Like,
yeah.
And Campbell's on the list, this short list of people where I for years would not touch any of his material or figuring any of it out. And if I had to play a cover, I would go out of my way. Like, I'm not learning the part. I don't want to know what it is. Because I want it to hit me like it hit me when I was a kid. Right. And it's been now I know all the parts inside and out.
I know. And I feel so bad because you kind of got forced into playing with us.
And at the same time, it's weird. It goes both ways. You do lose some of the magic, like some of the like if David Copperfield or who's the magician? Copperfield.
I can't think of anybody.
Imagine a very famous magician.
I know.
Imagine a very famous...
Tip of my tongue.
Yeah. So some famous magician, big enough to be like everybody in the world knows his name except for us two, apparently.
The guy who gets himself out of the water.
Super famous, and he gets in the water. And, and then you're like, I think he moved a statue one time. Or anyway, he does magic. I think if you... it would ruin the show for you if he explained how he did all of those illusions.
Right.
At the same time, you would gain a huge appreciation for what went into making that happen.
Right.
So it's kind of a double-edged thing. Yes, now the illusion is ruined, and I can't look at it as just magic anymore because I understand how it's put together, but I have a greater appreciation for it in another way because I now understand how it's all put together. So there's two sides to it. It's great to devour something and take it apart like you're doing with the covers thing and going how are all these parts making a song? It's almost like taking a puzzle and going, okay, well, this is clearly an Irish cottage, and then I'm going to like smash it and then put it all together. And now I understand how all these pieces make that picture of the Irish cottage.
Or if they don't, you got to figure out like what part of which pieces are missing.
What pieces?
I thought I had all the pieces here, but it sure doesn't look like an Irish cottage.
So what am I missing?
Speaking of solos, after our first episode, Kathleen said she would love to hear your thought process behind learning and practicing solos.
So I'd say in terms of, like doing a more holistic thing. So what I do we were talking about this, we were walking down by the river. I definitely try to play what we do, which is a petty with Stevie Nicks thing. And so I try to approach all of it as Mike Campbell. So when I'm doing the Lindsey Buckingham things, I'm trying to be like, well, how would Mike Campbell play Lindsey Buckingham's parts?
So it's Justin playing Mike Campbell playing Lindsey Buckingham.
Yeah, it's several. And that's my favorite thing.
It's a mind twist.
I totally. And I told you before, like I love certain Campbell things, especially the jammier stuff. I'm pretending to be Mike Campbell, pretending to be Jerry Garcia, because he'll do all these like totally Grateful Dead things, and he's clearly trying to cop Jerry Garcia. So I'm doing my version of Mike Campbell's version of Jerry Garcia. My point is, in a holistic thing, like where you're learning lots of someone's material, I start to kind of look at what are the tendencies of that player? Like, what are the little scrunks and scrapes and like weird noises that they will make doing that? And I'll focus on that. And then where are they going to lean kind of scale wise when they need to resolve something? Where are they going to go when they need to take off and like expand something? Where do they tend to go? Like if you listen to 20 or 30 of their solos or some live stuff, you start to notice these patterns of like, these dudes will do these kinds of things. There's a guy named Doug Seven who's like a online country guitar teacher and monster player, just disturbingly great player. And I forget his term for it, but he was talking about like learning like how to play like Brad Paisley or learning how to play like Roy Nichols or whoever, and looking through and finding those kind of little like fingerprint things that they do all the time, and then sort of focusing on being able to do that well, and then that sort of becomes like this weird foundation where you can like, well, I can kind of nail the sound they'll make when they'll do a certain thing, and I can kind of do that, and in a solo there'll be 4 or 5 those points where they do those like little technical things they always do, or little idiosyncratic personality things they do, and then you just fill in the notes in between it. That said, as far as practicing solos, like practicing individual solos, which I have to do when we do the showcase stuff, or when we were doing the karaoke band, and I had to learn a lot of solos. I would say number one, it's repetition. Just going over it and going slow. And I personally try to do a fair amount of that, not playing along with the record, but like trying to play by myself, and so I don't do that weird thing. Singers do it all the time, where you're singing 30 or 50 milliseconds behind the real thing because you don't know where the part really is, but you hear just a split second and then you can jump on it, and that'll screw you up because then when you go to try to play with the band and you're not hearing, if you play along with the record all the time, you don't know how much cue you're getting from the record. Yeah. Because it's fast, but you're still like, oh, that's the one, you know, like, and then honestly, the main thing is like, and maybe, I don't know how you develop this, you probably do this with Stevie a lot. I feel like you do it with Stevie, because you do very much, to me, a caricature of Stevie. Not that you overdo it, but you just like, there's a sense of like learning what is the thing that makes people think it sounds like what it sounds like.
Right.
And with guitar, it's very much the same thing. If I'm going to play the whole outro solo of Sweet Child of Mine, very classic thing. Everyone knows every note of that, but they don't really. You just have to make sure to hit those couple of places that are the really memorable things and really get that sounding really exactly like the guy. And then there's all this stuff in between. So there's like this like, hey, here's the thing. And then like, and then like, hey, here's the thing.
It's like there's a framework or a skeleton and you just hang a cloth on that. Yeah. And there's some points that stick up there. Like you have to get these things right to make it feel like the same thing. And I know this isn't exactly right. And as an analogy, it's like you'll sing a line and you're not worrying about every word sounding like Stevie, but on that last word that's like held out, you got to make sure to get that creaky vibrato and whatever. And then people go, oh my God, it sounds exactly like her. And it's like, well, I put that one thing in that's very recognizable. You know, I think that's, you know, that's more of what it is. Yeah.
That clearly went long.
Did it?
Well, got tired.
But that's 15 minutes, and that's the second part. It already stopped before that.
I was more referencing you getting tired.
It just happened.
I saw it. I feel it in my heart.
I know. My energy just went, and you saw it happen like within 5 seconds.
It's like if someone were like turning a dimmer, like if you're the dimmer the like 90s dimmers like everybody has. It's like when you get tired, it's like someone turned down the dimmer a little bit, like the room got a little darker. I don't even need to be looking at you.
You just feel it.
I'm just like, everything got darker.
Well, I guess this is a good place to cut it. So we'll just wrap it up here, right?
Anyway, sorry for that long explanation. But that's been our crazy week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See you guys next week.